Hello, welcome to the Working to Wellbeing podcast. I'm Kurt. I'm part of the marketing team at Working to Wellbeing. Today we're going to be talking about Stroke Awareness Month and the new stroke guidelines. And for that, I'm joined by Kaylie. Kaylie, if you just want to introduce yourself, tell us a bit about what you do here at Working to Wellbeing.
Hey, so I'm Kaylie. I'm a clinical health coach for Working To Wellbeing. I work in vocational rehabilitation sector, helping people with long-term conditions to self-manage the symptoms so that they could return to work or remain in work. My background is in occupational therapy. I've been an occupational therapist for over 10 years, working in both public and private sector. So I've got a range of long-term condition experience, both from kind of the acute phase down to kind of managing long-term conditions aspects of it.
And yeah, we're here today to talk about, as I said, it's Stroke Awareness Month. Recently, the guidelines were updated for stroke care in the UK and Ireland. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that, why it's important, obviously, to what we do and our service. And we're also going to discuss a little bit about the 31 in 31, which is part of the Stroke Association sort of way of fundraising and raising awareness, obviously, for stroke. So May is Stroke Awareness Month, and this month we are doing our bit, as we said, as part of this podcast, to discuss the new stroke guidelines. Stroke Awareness Month takes place in May every year, and since 2021, the Stroke Association have put more of an emphasis on to stroke recovery and also research into stroke. And this is why the guidelines have been updated because of the new research and new methods in terms of stroke care. And that's why I'm joined by Kaylie, as she is the Working to Wellbeing stroke lead. Kaylie, if you want to talk a bit more about the role that you have and also maybe a little bit about our service too.
Yeah, so as a clinical lead for stroke work support services, I'm here today to raise awareness about the subject of returning to work. I mean, when you look at the stats, especially on the Stroke Association website, like 1 in 4 strokes in the UK are happening to people of working age. So it's important for us to talk about it, raise awareness about it, and especially during May as well, when it's Stroke Awareness Month. It's great to just offer guidance, support, and anything that we can do to support people to remain back in work or return to work. So I guess it's looking at where people can access that support, what is out there for people, and just making sure that they're having the right support at the right time, because that can help massively and go a long way.
Yeah, so as we said, sort of Stroke Awareness Month, raising awareness for stroke recovery, the new guidelines in terms of stroke care. I think a lot of people
Yes.
aren't really aware that these types of services are available to them. Obviously, you wouldn't really be aware until something happens normally, but it's good to raise that awareness in case something does happen to you or someone you know, or someone who perhaps is in your workplace, which is obviously what we help with.
And do you know what? I'm always one for saying a small change offers a big impact. And do you know one thing, if people take it from today, is early conversations. So if someone has had a stroke, having an early conversation and just saying, how do you feel about work? Where, what are you thinking at this time? Because even though that might not be an immediate rehab goal for that person, because maybe they've got other things that they need to sort out first or other things they need to work on with the rehabilitation, guaranteed that's probably playing on their mind. Work's still there, work's a big part of our life. So if someone is maybe sat there thinking, when I wonder if I could return to work. I've got all these bills to pay and I'm not working. How's that going to work for me? I wonder what my employer's thinking. Like, do you know what? Even if we're not asking those questions, people still think, they still have those thoughts. And actually just kind of breaking down that communication and saying, how are you feeling? Like, what is going on for you? And understanding from their perspective what they would like, and understand how they are doing at this time. Because actually there's quite a lot we can do with that information. Hearing someone's voice is great because it enables us to understand what they're thinking and how they feel about work. Sometimes it's us having those conversations with employers as well. If they're a bit like, I don't know how I can support this person, or I don't know when they're going to return to work. Sometimes we can educate them and we can advocate for the employee. And actually, we can also start, so you don't have to be 100% recovered to return to work. Part of recovery is going to work. It's a big transition, and it's something that we would like to work more on. It's something that we can embed in rehabilitation goals. Um, if someone's really eager to go to work, or they're really keen on understanding how they can get back to work, we can start that at home. It doesn't have to be wait until we go back to work and then figure it out. Actually, let's start it at home. Work offers this routine. Let's look at our routine at home. Can we still get up at 8:30 and manage till 4:30 in the day? Or do we need regular breaks? Are we struggling with our fatigue, our tiredness, our concentration? Are we got an increase in pain? It's those things that we need to consider.
Yeah, I think I was watching, and I hear it quite often from Julie, who's our managing director at Working To Wellbeing. She says, obviously, that conversation being as early as possible, where someone could have been at work the day before and stroke has occurred, in the evening, the next day they're in hospital, work's going to be on their mind at some
Yeah.
point. It's gonna happen. It's something that's important to a lot of people. We spend a lot of time at work. We spend a lot of time with friends in the workplace. There's a lot of people who we're not going to see if we're not at work. So making that return to work is quite important. So, as we mentioned previously, there are new updated guidelines for stroke. As we said, it's the first time they've been updated since 2016, so the first time in about 7 years. So, there is a specific return to work section which is referenced in the vocational rehabilitation part of the guidelines. So, I'm just going to read the vocational rehabilitation part and then we'll sort of discuss why that's important afterwards. So, returning to work is an important goal for many people after stroke, and having comprehensive stroke services should include vocational rehabilitation provision to support people with stroke to return to work. Vocational rehabilitation is summarised as a coordinated plan supported by all those working with the employee to optimise their work capability. The organisation and delivery of vocational rehabilitation is discussed in more detail in section 4.15. So, if people want to read that or they want to read more of the guidelines in full detail, there is actually a post on our website which leads a link to the whole website. If you just go to strokeguideline.org, it comes up with the whole long list of stroke guidelines. There's a lot there, but yeah, specifically today, as I said, we're talking about vocational rehabilitation. So I think an interesting part of that is where it says a coordinated plan supported by all of those working with the employee. Obviously, as you said before, working not just with the employee, but with the employer as well to help them support the employee when they do make that return to work. I think that's really
Yeah.
important because, as you say, you can't just expect someone to return to work and just think they're going to get on with it straight away as they were beforehand.
Yeah, definitely. Do you know what, that having that coordinated, that one person who you can go to, that will help you from the start. That person who might be able to help you prepare before going into work. So having those early conversations. Then when we're looking at actually that first day in work, or that first hour that we take to get back into work, what are those things that are we going to do to help support that person? Does that employer need to get involved at that time? Does reasonable adjustments need to happen to the workplace? There's loads of things that we can explore. And do you know what? It's so individualized. Like, each person is going to have their different needs. It needs to be tailored for them.
Yeah, definitely. So going back to the guidelines, as we said, excuse me, um, what does these sort of updated guidelines mean for stroke care services such as our stroke work rehabilitation service? What does that mean in terms of planning the service, how we approach different patients, different people? How does that work in terms of our end of things?
Yeah, do you know what, the like you said, it was 7 years since it was last updated. So within that 7 years, there would have been a lot more updates on guidelines, a lot more evidence out, a lot more updated research. So the first point is for us to look at it and make sure that what we're doing is providing the best outcome with return to work for the patient, for stroke survivors. Are we doing all that we can at this time? So it's kind of having that moment just to have a look and reflect on what we're currently providing and whether there's things that we can do to do more. Actually, vocational rehab has always been known as a neglected area within health service. And actually, in the national guidelines, it says that if someone wants to return to work, or has got that interest in returning to work, or wants to know more about how they can return to work, they should have a vocational rehabilitation program. And actually, do you know what? Vocational rehabilitation professionals, there's a lot of us out there. There's loads of us out there that has got a wealth of experience. Sometimes, and again, with the information, it's knowing where to find us. But actually, we're specialists in understanding the world of work, and we can help people with disabilities to get back to work.
Yeah, I won't. I'll sort of be honest. Like before I joined Working to Wellbeing, I wasn't even aware it was like something that existed almost. Obviously, for myself, like I've never sort of fortunately had sort of any long-term condition or really had anyone of working age who's had a long-term condition, so they've not really had to get back to work. But having that, service to provide support to get people back to work, it almost like makes sense. It's like when you get told what it is, it's like, oh yeah, that makes 100% sense. Like, why is this
Yeah,
not more shouted about in like the public space almost? It's almost like not until something happens that people are really aware of it, like we said before. It's almost
yeah.
like a lot of people are really unaware of sort of services that are available to them. So yeah, I think it's really good that sort of months like Stroke Awareness Month exist and people within our space sort of shout about what we do because it is really important to those people who do want
Yeah.
to return to work.
Yeah, and return to work itself, especially for stroke survivors, is actually a largely unmet need. And I think that's brings us back to like our earlier conversations when we talked about having an early conversation with someone about how they feel about work. It does not have to be an immediate goal, but it's nice to open that communication because it always makes things easier when we do want to eventually look at how we can get someone back to work, or how that assessment or rehabilitation, or how that plan is going to work for that person.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, we are providing a stroke rehabilitation work support service. It's a lot of words. So if you want to read more about that, again, the link will be in sort of the description of what is hopefully going to be this YouTube video. If not, you can visit workingtowellbeing.com, two as the number two, and it will be found on our homepage. You can look it up there if you want to find out a bit more information. So as an example, so Kaylie will say, what is sort of a symptom that could potentially happen to someone who has a stroke that may, impair their ability to work, and how would they sort of go through the process of, sort of recovery and care, and how they'd manage their symptoms to hopefully make a successful return to work?
So we look at the long-term impact of what stroke can have on a person, and it's very individualized. It can range from impaired speech to restricted physical abilities, or memory, as well as ongoing pain and fatigue. So it really depends on that person and what they need support with at the time. So for example, if someone had post-stroke fatigue, which is very common, but also it's classed as a invisible symptom, which basically means you can't physically see it. So it's not visible to the eye, but actually it impacts us massively. So I would just try to get to understand what is happening for the person at the time. Did they know what fatigue is? Have they been told about it? How are they managing it at the moment? What's working well for them? And also us working alongside them to figure out how we can continue to support them and build up those coping skills to manage it. Fatigue is a long-term condition, and it takes time to embed practice with it, to change the way we do things, to support ourselves to manage it. You can imagine there's that general tiredness that people have. We get tired after a long day at work, and then we think, okay, let's just have a good night's sleep, and then I'll be all right the next day. Fatigue isn't that. Fatigue isn't tiredness. It's very different from that. We don't have that recovery phase and as quickly. And also, one thing we can do is enough to take all our energy. So we have to be really careful how we pace ourselves, and recognizing those signs. For me, what takes my energy? For one person, that could be something that's very physical. For another person, it could be something that's very cognitive. So something that requires a lot of concentration or memory. So we work with that person to understand that, and we tailor our interventions around what suits their needs and also what suits their working role. Because if someone has got cognitive fatigue, but they got a very heavy computer-based role that requires a lot of thinking, numbers, concentration, a lot of meetings, it's looking at about how, okay, if we can't avoid those situations, how do we adapt around it? What do we do to change it? And how can we give the person the confidence to go into those situations knowing they can manage it? But like I said, we have people who have got like visual impairments. So, it's that thing of if someone's sitting there doing their job, can they physically see things on the screen? Um, or, are they only seeing half of the screen? Are they neglecting the one side? Because that's very common in stroke. Um, if so, are they missing half of the email? Even to the point where someone could tap them on the shoulder in work and they might be quite frightened because they didn't know that person was there. They physically couldn't see them. They've got impairment of the one side, so they didn't maybe feel it as well. So sometimes like little approaches like that can be quite good to know about. And it's really understanding what's going on for the person, learning about this stroke, what it's impacted, and using our skills and knowledge to find ways to manage it.
Okay, yeah, so we just wanted to take the last few minutes of this podcast just to talk about the 31 in 31 that we're doing, which is something the Stroke Association have set up. It's 31 minutes of exercise in the 31 days of May. So yeah, there's a few members of staff. I think there's about 6 of us that have signed up for it. Kaylie introduced it to us in last week's staff meeting. So Kaylie, if you want to explain a little bit about 31 in 31 and what you've been doing so far in May, because we're currently on the 4th of May as we record this.
I seen it advertised on the Stroke Association website, and I just thought it was a great way for us all to move more in the day. And that's really what it's about, is 31 minutes of moving. How can we move more in the day? Like being active is one of the biggest things that you can do for yourself and also your health, especially after stroke. So it's great awareness to get us all to move more. And our jobs actually involve sitting down at a computer. So we're very mindful that we probably don't move as much in the days we should. So I wanted to put it out there and thought, well, what a great idea. Like, let me see if anyone else wants to join with me. And before I know it, I had 5 other people that were like, yep, that's great, let's all sign up. So actually, it's great to have it with my colleagues because we can just keep each other encouraged. We look at what each other are doing to get ideas. So I went did golf the other day. I did driving range. I am not a golfer in any way, but I thought it's moving. And yes, I wasn't good at it, but I got up, I moved, I did something a bit different. And actually, I probably wouldn't think to do that in the weekday, but probably be my thought towards the weekend, what should I do? But because we're trying to do it every day, I was just like, well, let me think of something different. So I've done that. I went for a walk the other day, and I was saying to you, Kit, that I've seen someone who has actually had the stroke t-shirt on as well. So they've sent us these t-shirts like this.
Yeah.
And I seen someone who was on a walk with one on the other day, and it was great because we just had that moment where we were like, oh, like we both know why we're doing this, and it just brings that community spirit almost back into it. But how has it been going for you? How have you been getting on? Because you're one of us that are doing it.
Yeah, so I live sort of like 15 to 20 minutes away from the office. So if I wanted to say I was doing exercise every weekday by walking to work, which I do, I could count that, but I try not to, just because that's sort of like naturally part of my day already. Obviously, if there are days where I physically can't, I'd sort of try and count it, but I try not to count it. But yeah, what I've been doing really is sort of like a lot of running, basically. I play football, obviously during the football season, which is just finished for us, and I got injured sort of partway through the season, and I'm sort of just towards the back end, and sort of feeling like I'm getting back to fitness. But obviously now we're stopping. I don't generally do any fitness between the off season, so it's like a good way of sort of motivating myself, because I think if we didn't do this, I'd just do the same as what I do every year and just not do anything for a few months. So
Yeah.
it's really good that this has actually come up, and it was sort of we've actually got a piece about behavior change and habit, which Orla wrote last week. And I think if you do the 31 days of exercise, it sort of that should be enough then to sort of like get you into it. Like I say, you could do it for a couple of days and go, oh, I don't really want to do this anymore. But to try and stay motivated to do it for 31 days, and it becomes a habit, then you're sort of into it. Then you're not really gonna.
Mm.
You almost feel like you're missing out if you're not doing it anymore. So
Yeah,
yeah, a lot of running.
I was gonna say about the 31 minutes. Like I don't know what he's done, but I haven't always done it in one go. Sometimes what I've done is split it 3 times throughout the day, depending on like what my day's like or how I'm feeling that day. So I've still got the goal to keep going, to keep moving, but sometimes I just struggling to find 31 minutes, which is so bad to say that, but struggling to find 31 minutes in the day. But what I did is I decided to adjust it and just kind of do 10 minutes here and an 11-minute one then towards the end of the day. So yeah, just got to do it how it suits you, isn't it? And definitely pick
Yeah.
something that you enjoy doing.
The idea of 31 minutes of exercise in May is not only raising awareness, but also there is some fundraising involved. So our managing director Julie has actually set up a fundraiser herself as well to do this. If I can find the link and she allows me to put it in, I'll put it within sort of the description of the YouTube video and potentially on our social media as well, depending obviously if she wants us to do that. So yeah, obviously sign-ups have now closed for the 31 and 31 because we are already in May. By the time you're seeing this, it'll probably be about halfway through May. But if you want to, start late, or if you want to start from 31 days from the day that you're seeing this, obviously you can do that. And obviously let us know how you're getting on, or if you have been doing the 31 and 31, what you've been doing as well. So that'd be really interesting to hear. So yeah, that is it for today's podcast. It's been our first one, so there may have been a few hiccups here and there, but hopefully you have enjoyed listening to it. Thank you to Kaylie for coming on and obviously using her profession and knowledge in stroke to sort of help me out, because obviously I've learned a lot in this podcast as well. So thank you to Kaylie for that. Yeah, as I said, if you've watched or listened to this, there'll be links to everything we've spoke about in the description and also on our website, so you can go and check those out there. And yeah, hopefully we'll see you soon with another podcast on everything relating to long-term health and well-being, and obviously vocational rehabilitation, and anything else that sort of comes up that's related to what we do at Working to Wellbeing. As I mentioned, if you want to learn more about us, there'll be a link in the description, or head to working to, which is the number 2, wellbeing.com. And yeah, that's it for now. Thank you all for watching and listening, and we'll see you soon.